Imagine logging onto your favorite streaming platform, queuing up this massive new blockbuster film, and then halfway through you realize something kind of unsettling.
Let me guess, not a single actor on the screen actually stepped foot on a physical set.
Exactly. Every micro-expression, every sigh, every tear is just being generated in real time. They're pulling from this AI artist library that mapped the likeness of performers who are literally just sitting at home.
And the wild thing is that isn't some pitch for a sci-fi script. That is a very real business model making headlines today.
Yeah, it really is. Welcome to another deep dive. Today we are pulling entirely from the April 26, 2026 issue of the Sunday Blender newsletter.
Which is packed with some absolutely mind-bending updates this week.
Totally. And our mission for you today is all about shifting boundaries. We are looking at a world that is aggressively renegotiating its limits. We're talking about shattering biological ceilings, outsourcing our minds to algorithms, and get this, quite literally, looking to shift our heavy infrastructure into the vacuum of space.
Right, and it forces you to look at these individual news stories not just as isolated events, but as stress tests. When you dig into the sources provided, you see humanity actively trying to figure out what functions belong to the flesh, what belongs to the machine, and what actually happens to our culture when those lines blur.
Okay, let's unpack this and let's start with the flesh. Because if you really want to understand our biological limits, just look at what happened at the London Marathon today.
Oh, the sub-2-hour race. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Kenyan runner Saw officially shattered the 2-hour barrier in a sanctioned race. He crossed the line at 1:59.3, breaking Kelvin Kiptum's 2023 record.
Which is just a monumental shift.
And it wasn't just him. Ethiopia's Tixtafefa pushed the women's limit way down to 2:15.41. I mean, for decades, the sub-2-hour marathon was viewed as a literal biological impossibility.
Yeah, sports scientists basically argued that the human heart and lungs, they just couldn't clear lactic acid fast enough to sustain that kind of pace.
Right, but here we are.
Because the mechanism of human endurance has fundamentally shifted from a physiological barrier to an engineering and psychological one.
Okay, wait, what do you mean by an engineering barrier? Like the shoes?
Yeah, exactly. The footwear technology with those carbon fiber plates certainly optimizes energy return, but honestly, breaking the 2-hour mark is primarily about the psychological dam bursting.
Like the 4-minute mile.
Precisely. Once Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, everyone else realized the body wouldn't just disintegrate at that speed. SAW just proved that running 42.2 kilometers at what is essentially a sustained sprint pace isn't lethal, it's just the new baseline.
Man, that's wild. I wonder if that's why our whole definition of peak performance is sort of fragmenting right now.
How do you mean?
Well, you look at the 2026 Laureus World Sports Awards in Madrid, the Oscars of sports. Carlos Alcaraz and Aryna Sabalenka took the top tennis honors, which makes sense.
Right, very standard.
And Lamine Yamal won the Youth Award at just 17 for his football dominance, and PSG took the team award. But the subtext of the awards was just fascinating. The hosts were Novak Djokovic and Eileen Gu.
Which is a very unexpected crossover.
Super unexpected. And then there was this massive backlash online over Chinese badminton #1, Shi Yuqi, getting completely snubbed for a nomination. It feels like, we can't agree on what makes an athlete truly elite anymore unless it transcends the purely physical.
I'd argue that is precisely why Victor Wembanyama is the most compelling athlete alive right now.
Oh, absolutely. He was just unanimously named the NBA's Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, at 22. He is the youngest to ever win it and the first to get all 100 media votes.
I read this breakdown of his defensive metrics, and it's crazy. Opposing teams literally run their offense completely away from the basket if he is on the floor.
He's 7'4", but he alters the entire geometry of a basketball court without even touching the ball.
Yeah, but here's the detail from the newsletter that I find so revealing about this whole mind-over-body shift. To prepare for this season, Wembanyama actually went to the Shaolin Temple in China for 10 days.
Yeah, the pictures were everywhere.
Right. He shaved his head, wore monk robes, meditated, and practiced kung fu. And I'm just sitting here struggling to reconcile that. Why does a 7'4" physical anomaly need to go practice ancient martial arts?
Well, because he recognizes that physical optimization has a ceiling. When your biomechanics are already a complete statistical outlier, the only frontier left to conquer is the nervous system.
Ah, that makes sense.
Yeah, Kung Fu and Shaolin meditation, they aren't about building muscle. They're about extreme proprioception, like knowing exactly where your body is in space, and emotional regulation in high-stress environments. Wembanyama is outsourcing his athletic development to a spiritual discipline because his physical domain is basically maxed out.
Wow. So are we entering an era where human sports become entirely about mastering the mind, while drones basically take over the pure physical extremes?
What's fascinating here is that you're seeing exactly that transition in real time. Look at the international drone sports games happening right now in Chengdu.
Oh my gosh, I saw the clips of this. It's not just drone racing anymore.
Not at all. Over 800 teams are competing in drone basketball. You have autonomous units that have to coordinate with each other to dunk a ball.
That is insane.
And they have drone fencing, which requires like split-second target tagging. They even have an equestrian course where drones navigate alongside robotic dogs.
Robotic dogs and drones running an obstacle course. It sounds like a video game.
It does, but don't let the sports framing fool you. When you watch a drone execute a slam dunk, you aren't really watching a game. You are watching a real-time prototype for a machine capable of, say, catching a falling package in a warehouse before it hits the concrete.
Well, right, it's practical application.
Exactly. Drone fencing is a stress test for high-speed target identification and precision interception. Those are skills directly applicable to defense logistics. Gamifying these tasks just allows organizers to crowdsource the research and development of highly complex industrial mechanics, all under the guise of entertainment.
So you're saying it's essentially this massive open source engineering lab disguised as a stadium.
Precisely.
But, if machines are quietly taking over those complex physical tasks, they're aggressively moving into our cultural spaces too.
Oh, without a doubt. The friction between scalable AI and our human desire for, messy authenticity is turning into a full-blown crisis.
Which brings us back to that streaming platform, iQIYI in China. They announced that AI artist library we were talking about earlier. They've mapped over 100 actors, their voices, their faces, their specific mannerisms. They can generate entirely new, photorealistic performances.
And the CEO, Gong Yu, didn't he make some pretty bold claims about it?
Bold is an understatement. He actually stated that live-action filming might one day become an intangible cultural heritage. He compared a traditional movie set to something like traditional glass blowing.
Wow.
Yeah. Basically calling it a novelty to be preserved in a museum.
See, I think that is a profound misreading of why humans consume art.
How so?
Tech executives frequently assume that audiences just want a flawless, frictionless product. But look at the immediate backlash. That iQIYI has gone crazy, hashtag was trending instantly. Actors were claiming they never consented, legal teams were mobilizing.
Right, people were furious.
Because audiences value the vulnerability of a performance. When an actor cries on screen, the emotional weight comes from the knowledge that a human being had to access a real emotional reservoir to produce that tear. If an algorithm generates the tear, the empathy circuit is just broken.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because tech CEOs think we want flawless, digitized actors, but look at the box office today. The new Michael Jackson biopic, Michael, opens globally today.
Starring his real-life nephew, Jafar Jackson.
Exactly. And it is obliterating musical biopic presale records. It's pulling in this massive demographic of people born long after his death in 2009. We aren't going to the theater for a perfectly synthesized AI recreation of Michael. We're going because of the biological familial through line of his nephew playing him.
Yeah.
We want that lineage.
We deeply value the human struggle, and corporate marketing departments continually trip over this reality. Take Nike's blunder at the Boston Marathon this year.
Oh man, I saw the photos of that sign. It was brutal.
They erected a massive sign reading, "Runners welcome, walkers tolerated."
Disability advocates absolutely tore them apart online. The Boston Marathon has a huge adaptive division. I mean, people push through grueling physical rehabilitation just to walk a few miles of that course.
It was completely tone deaf.
Yeah, Nike had to scramble, rip the signs down, and replace them with "movement is what matters." And ironically, Adidas is the official sponsor of the race anyway.
That's hilarious. But it shows how Nike was trying to market this hyper-optimized ethos of elite performance, completely missing that the average person connects far more with the painful, messy reality of just trying to cross the finish line.
Totally. And if you want the ultimate proof that people prefer messy human authenticity over polished algorithms, you just have to look at the Super Football League in Jiangsu, China.
The grassroots league, right?
Yeah, this is a grassroots city versus city league. The opening ceremony in Chengdu featured 40 go-karts, a live concert, and 290 dancing robot dogs.
Which sounds incredibly chaotic in the best way.
It gets better. They packed 40,000 fans into a stadium, and tickets cost 10 yuan. That is basically $1.50. The national men's team has been such a disappointment, so fans just abandoned the elite tier and fully embraced local friction. Their official motto is literally game is number 1, friendship is number 14.
Think about your own media diet this week. Are you gravitating toward highly produced, algorithmically recommended content, or are you looking for a podcast, a local event, or a community where the edges are a bit rough?
Definitely the latter.
Right. The Super League is basically an immunological response. The faster the tech sector tries to digitize and polish our entertainment, the harder society pushes back by seeking out hyper-local, high-friction experiences where you sit shoulder to shoulder with your neighbors.
I love that framing an immunological response. But the virus, if we want to call it that, is mutating at a terrifying speed right now. The data in the Sunday Blender regarding the new intelligence economy is staggering.
You're talking about Anthropic.
Yeah. Between February 1st and March 23rd, that's just 52 days, Anthropic shipped 73 new products and features. That is well over a release a day.
It's a blistering pace.
They are rolling out autonomous AI agents, enterprise integrations, model upgrades, and investors just value the company at $1 trillion. I just don't understand, how is it physically possible for human engineers to write, test, and deploy code that fast?
It isn't. The only way you sustain a deployment pipeline of 73 features in 52 days is if the AI is actively augmenting the engineering process itself.
So the AI is building the AI.
Exactly. The feedback loop is closing. We are moving from humans building AI to humans directing AI to build better versions of itself.
Which perfectly explains SpaceX's recent move. They just signed a partnership with an AI coding startup called Cursor. And baked into the deal is an option to acquire the company for $60 billion.
$60 billion? That's astronomical for a coding startup.
Right. Cursor is a platform that essentially acts as an autonomous co-founder for software developers.
Yeah.
And their origin story is wild. It was founded in 2022 by 4 MIT dropouts: Michael Truhl, Swala Asif, Arvid Lindmark, and Aman Sanger.
And didn't some of them have competitive math backgrounds?
Yes. 2 of them were teenage international math Olympiad competitors. They launched a tool, and within 4 years, they're looking at a $60 billion exit.
Well, they applied extreme mathematical rigor to code generation. It's why Cursor doesn't just auto-complete a line of code. It actually understands the entire architecture of a software project and predicts structural changes across thousands of files simultaneously.
That reminds me, the newsletter actually included a geometry puzzle that feels like a nod to those math Olympiad roots.
Oh, I saw that. It's a great puzzle.
Right. Picture a rectangle. Now draw 4 lines starting from the midpoints of the 4 sides and have all those lines meet at a single random point somewhere inside the rectangle.
Okay, so you've got 4 regions now.
Yep. If 3 of those regions have areas of 3, 4, and 5, what is the area of the 4th region? I won't spoil the answer for you guys, but the spatial reasoning required to solve it is exactly the kind of abstract logic those founders used to build a $60 billion machine.
It's a brilliant exercise in balancing equations. But, I find the contrast with Jamie Ding far more compelling here.
Oh, Jamie Ding. He's the 33-year-old housing administrator from New Jersey. He just won his 30th consecutive game on Jeopardy.
Yep. He has secured nearly $850,000.
And while we are building trillion-dollar server farms to ingest the entirety of the internet, Ding prepared for the show by just walking into his local public library, borrowing stacks of physical books, and practicing with a buzzer app on his phone.
Exactly. This raises an important question about how we value intelligence. We get so mesmerized by Anthropic and Cursor that we forget the human brain remains an astonishingly efficient retrieval engine. Ding didn't need a multi-billion-dollar compute cluster. He needed a library card and focused attention.
But the infrastructure supplying that compute power globally is going through this massive seismic shift. Look at DeepSeek V4.
The open-source model out of Hangzhou.
Yeah. The performance benchmarks rival top-tier American models like Claude 4.7 or GPT 5.5, but DeepSeek costs 1/6 of the price to run. And the critical mechanism here is that it is fundamentally designed to operate efficiently on Chinese-made Huawei chips, totally bypassing the need for American hardware.
That is a masterclass in algorithmic optimization. When you are cut off from the fastest memory chips due to geopolitical export controls, you can't just throw raw power at the problem.
You have to get creative.
Right. DeepSeek had to rewrite the underlying architecture to minimize memory bottlenecks. They turned a hardware constraint into a massive software advantage, resulting in an open-source model that democratizes access to AI globally.
It's like a massive restaurant chain realizing they can't import ingredients anymore, so they tear up the menu, source everything from local farmers, and end up creating a cheaper, better dish.
That's a great analogy.
And you see that exact same localized adaptation happening in the auto industry right now. At the Beijing Auto Show, Audi unveiled the E7X. This is a German luxury SUV, but it is built entirely in China for China.
So they aren't just importing German software anymore?
Nope. They partnered with SAIC, they integrated Huawei self-driving software, and they are using local CATL batteries. They realize they have to tap directly into the local digital ecosystem to compete.
Because the global supply chain is bifurcating. We are moving away from a model of globalization where one region exports its standard to the rest of the world. Now, if you want to compete, you have to integrate into highly localized, self-sustaining technological spheres.
Which proves that throwing endless money at a problem using the old playbook doesn't guarantee a win. I mean, look at the New York Mets.
Ooh, baseball.
Yeah, they have one of the highest payrolls in baseball, yet they just snapped a horrific 12-game losing streak. In 9 of those games, they scored fewer than 2 runs. You can spend hundreds of millions of dollars on elite athletes, and sometimes the chemistry just flatlines.
It's a very humbling reminder that variance and friction will always exist in human systems, no matter the budget.
But friction in our technology systems requires physical resources to solve. All of these AI models, Anthropic, DeepSeek, Cursor, they require terrifying amounts of electricity and fresh water to cool the servers. And Earth is simply running out of viable real estate for it.
Which leads us perfectly into the final theme of today's deep dive.
Yes. Deep time and high orbit.
Yeah.
A startup called Orbital Changwon just secured an $8.4 billion credit line to construct data centers in space by 2035. I have a hard time wrapping my head around the logistics of this. Launching heavy servers on rockets seems massively inefficient compared to just, building a liquid-cooled warehouse in Iceland.
Well, in the short term, yes, launch costs are extremely high. But over a 20-year horizon, the thermodynamics of space make it incredibly viable.
Really? How so?
On Earth, our atmosphere acts as an insulating blanket. Data centers consume vast amounts of fresh water just to fight the heat generated by the processors. But in high orbit, you have 2 massive advantages. Constant, unshadowed solar radiation for limitless energy, and the near absolute zero vacuum of space.
Oh, because space is cold.
Space is an infinite heat sink. You expose the cooling arrays to the shadows, and the thermal management requires zero water.
Wow. So we are essentially externalizing the environmental cost of our digital brains to the stars. And looking back at our planet from that external vantage point is really powerful. NASA just celebrated Earth Day by releasing an Artemis II photograph of the Earth setting behind the cratered horizon of the moon.
It was a direct homage to the famous 1968 Apollo 8 Earthrise photo, right?
Yeah, the one that sparked the modern environmental movement. NASA even launched a Your Name and Landsat tool this week, where satellite imagery finds letters in the natural curves of rivers and mountains to spell your name. We are looking down at ourselves, mapping our identity onto the geography.
But the irony is, while we are looking up to solve our data constraints, we are simultaneously digging deeper into our planetary history than ever before.
Right. In the Philippines, researchers at Ateneo de Manila University built a specialized robot called Archaeobot. It uses these tiny micromanipulators to excavate incredibly delicate ancient sites. They just found evidence of highly skilled seafarers navigating the islands 35,000 years ago.
That's tens of thousands of years before recorded civilization.
Exactly. These were people crossing open, treacherous oceans. And if you go even deeper into deep time, scientists at Japan's Hokkaido University just published research on what they are calling Cretaceous krakens.
Krakens.
Yes. These were 19-meter-long giant octopuses living 100 million years ago. They were hunting and crushing the bones of mosasaurs, which were giant marine reptiles.
Just to put that in perspective for everyone, a 19-meter octopus is roughly the length of a modern bowling lane.
Okay.
It was the unquestioned apex predator of its era.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
But it really puts our current technological obsession into perspective. We look at 2,400-year-old inventions and find ways to upgrade them. The 43rd International Kite Festival in Weifang, China, just launched 2,300 kites.
I saw those. They had giant sock-bodied elephants and robotic flying dogs.
Yeah. They took an ancient tradition and applied AI aerodynamic modeling and modern carbon fiber to it.
Yeah.
We just constantly tinker and engineer,
Yeah.
but that engineering carries real existential risk. The newsletter concludes with a pretty heavy milestone this week. the 40th anniversary of the Chernobyl disaster.
Right. In 1986, a reactor test triggered an explosion that released 400 times the radiation of the Hiroshima bomb.
And yet, if you visit the 30-kilometer exclusion zone around Pripyat today, what you find is a thriving accidental wilderness. In the complete absence of human intervention, wolves, bears, and lynx have just reclaimed the territory.
It makes you wonder about the long-term trajectory of all these boundaries we are pushing.
It really does. We have robots delicately digging up 35,000-year-old mariners. We are discovering 100-million-year-old krakens. And simultaneously, we're trying to launch our trillion-dollar AI architecture into orbit so we don't boil our own oceans.
It reveals a profound cycle. Those Cretaceous krakens were the apex predators of their epoch, and we are the apex predators of ours. But our defining characteristic is our capacity to entirely engineer our own habitat.
For better or worse.
Exactly. Chernobyl stands as the ultimate monument to our destructive ceiling, a reminder that we can render our environment uninhabitable in a matter of seconds. Yet our push to build solar-powered servers in high orbit demonstrates our relentless drive to transcend those biological and environmental constraints.
Man, that is a staggering amount of perspective to absorb. We really mapped the extremes today. We started with the sheer physiological breakthroughs of sub-2-hour marathons, and Wembanyama outsourcing his basketball defense to Shaolin monks, while autonomous drones take over our heavy industrial lifting disguised as sports.
We covered a lot of ground.
We analyzed the cultural friction of AI actors threatening the raw, messy authenticity that 40,000 football fans in Jiangsu so clearly crave. We looked under the hood of a hyper-accelerated intelligence economy where Anthropic and MIT dropouts are commanding billions and global supply chains are fracturing to build localized hardware.
And we ended by looking out into the vacuum of space.
Yep. Tracing our lineage back to ancient seafarers and giant krakens, all while wrestling with the radioactive legacy of Chernobyl.
You know, it forces a fascinating question about the endgame of all this innovation. Think about the two extremes we discussed today. If we eventually succeed in launching all of our heavy infrastructure, our data centers, and our energy production into the cold vacuum of orbit,
Yeah.
and if artificial intelligence ultimately generates all of our entertainment, acting, and culture without humans ever needing to step on a physical set, what happens to Earth?
Oh, wow.
Does the entire planet slowly revert to an accidental wilderness, much like Chernobyl? Or does it become exactly what the CEO of AIC predicted, a massive, highly curated heritage museum?
An accidental wilderness or a planetary museum? I don't know which answer is more unsettling, honestly, but it completely changes how you view the tech we interact with every single day. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the Sunday Blender. For you listening, keep reading, keep questioning the systems you engage with, and we'll catch you on the next one.